If you really think about it, AEW's Double or Nothing is a perfect pay-per-view name. Much like a casino, there are many pretty lights, grand spectacles of distraction, and somehow my bank account is lower than whenever I entered. I wonder why that is, Tony. This is Extreme League Wrestling, and here are our top 10 most shocking AEW Double or Nothing moments. Honorable mention, Hangman Adam Page is the Joker. While Hangman Adam Page winning the inaugural Casino Battle Royal was a bit predictable, it's hard not to mention it on this list. The Millennial Cowboy was not an organic babyface from the jump in AEW, and if anything, we were unsure if Hangman was even going to be on the card after Pac had to pull out of the first ever Double or Nothing. And while history has shown us that All Elite Wrestling has Adam Page as one of its for sure big babyface cornerstones, this is a great watch if you're looking to see the rise of the Cowboy. Number 10, Bret Hart presents the AEW World Title. As we've seen over the past couple of weeks, belt design can be a contentious topic in the world of professional wrestling. A championship's design not only sets the tone for how that championship is going to be presented, but also how the top performers for that title will treat it. And some designs have aged like the finest of wine, and some just look like jam on toast. Luckily, the newly minted AEW World Title is a fantastic design, both modern and classic in its presentation. And to have the presentation of the newly minted World Title presented by one of the best to ever do it in Bret Hart gave this belt the best possible start it could ever have. Number 9, the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros. Whether it's Bret the Hitman Hart versus the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, or CM Punk versus Bryan Danielson, any promotion needs a core set of performers that can come together and put on a certified classic if needed for a big pay-per-view. This cornerstone for All Elite Wrestling was figured out extremely quickly with a combination of the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. All four men have a long-standing working history together previous to the inception of AEW, so putting them together was a certified no-brainer. Their match for the AAA Tag Team titles was a fantastic spot fest that I'm sure Jim Cornette absolutely loved and saw zero problems with. With each match between these pair of brothers escalating in theatrics as time goes on in All Elite Wrestling, I'm perfectly fine if they just fight forever. And hey, do you like what you're seeing so far? If so, stick around a while. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. Number 8, Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy versus Pac for the AEW title. Arguably, one way AEW sets itself apart from its bigger competitor is its ability to create new stars. So it only felt right for the first pay-per-view in front of fans again after the lockdown era that it would be headlined by the 3 biggest stars created during the pandemic and before the pandemic. Kenny Omega at this point had already reached professional wrestling god status with his AEW title run. And while the Bastard Pac was primarily absent from the company due to travel restrictions in 2020 and 2021, his massive amount of fan support, in-ring psychology, and history with the 2 other men in this triple threat made him fit into this main event like a glove. And finally, the biggest star created in the AEW lockdown era, Orange Cassidy. In my opinion, regardless of any pandemic era of wrestling, Cassidy is tailor-made to have a star main event position in All Elite Wrestling. His unique yet lazy wrestling style, his unique character work both in the ring and on the mic. And this guy has such an appeal to families who are primarily going to be a large chunk of your audience if you're any wrestling promotion. It's quite funny how the quote-unquote laziest guy in the company is probably the biggest workhorse in the company. And while prior to the pandemic this was all in theory, in the lockdown era of AEW shows, we saw this blossom. We saw the birth of main event Orange Cassidy in his blood feud with Chris Jericho, with Cassidy finally winning the rubber match and dunking the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla in a vat of mimosa. While this match was entertaining, it was definitely not surprising in its result, with Kenny Omega retaining the AEW World Championship. In front of one of the most vocal crowds I would say in wrestling history, because we were all excited that we weren't inside for the first time in 18 months. Number 7, Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega. Let me take you back in time here for a moment for NJPW's Wrestle Kingdom 12 show. At this show, we saw the unthinkable, when Chris Jericho performed for a company outside of Vince McMahon's land of meaty mannequins. That night at the Tokyo Dome, we saw a dream match that we thought would never happen, in Chris Jericho facing off against Kenny Omega for the NJPW United States Championship. Of course, these gentlemen did not fall short of a 5-star classic, but for the historical significance to AEW for this match, it has to make our list. Orchestrated by Don Callis, that carny piece of shit, this bout between two of the greatest to ever do it was evidence enough to show a certain Khan family that there was viability for another promotion in professional wrestling. Winning the match, Chris Jericho went on to face Hangman Adam Page at that year's All Out to become your inaugural AEW World Champion. And also for AEW's long-term health, this would then metamorphosize Kenny Omega into becoming the professional wrestling god. The aftermath even saw a shocking debut that would ensure the health of all elite wrestling for years to come. But that's later on in our list. Number 6, Cody versus Anthony Agogo. Contrary to what the Tribal Chief might tell you, the reason why AEW fans began to turn on the American Nightmare was not due to an inability to get over. The Codyverse did feel a bit disjointed and disconnected from the rest of the AEW product. While people were still behind the grandson of a plumber, the sourness did start with this tone-deaf feud. While the American hero versus the dastardly foreign heel would be something that would have worked back in his father's day, it was a storyline that we've seen for decades now, and that you think Cody would have left back in the big dub, which totally went against the company narrative at the time that it was a viable alternative from WWE. Cody's over-the-top patriotic-style promos were not what the American audience needed at the time, especially just days after the murder of George Floyd. A weigh-in section with a faulty scale and the distractions of a nearby fireworks show during the segment put this feud in the comical grave that it deserved. The Green Agogo and Cody put on a fine enough match, but this was the beginning of the end for the EVP in AEW. Number 5, Jon Moxley versus Mr. Brodie Lee. Whether he was with the Wyatt family or alongside his bludgeoned brother, the late John Hubert was not only a fantastic man, but he was pretty damn good at this whole professional wrestling thing. I'm just saying, there is a very valid reason why people wanted to see him added to Wyatt vs. Orton for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 33. But, with the power of hindsight, we can see the Exalted One dodged a big bullet. Regardless, there was still a cult-like fanbase online that wanted to see him in a main event spot. It was finally his time to shine at Double or Nothing 2020, where he faced off against longtime friend and AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. A heavyweight barn-burning bout, this match finally put the question to bed if the Big Rig could be a bona fide main eventer, and it was a resounding yes. This sadly would be Brodie Lee's last pay-per-view main event given his passing at the end of 2020. Exalted in heaven, indeed. Number 4, the Stadium Stampede. It's hard to talk about AEW without mentioning the COVID era, mainly because it happened so soon after the promotion was founded by Tony Khan and the Elite Boys. I am a firm believer in the theory that wrestling promoters do some of their best work when their backs are against the wall. So what do you do when the entire world shuts down, you can't do the first ever Blood and Guts match, and you need to find out a way to blow off this big faction feud? Well, Tony has at his disposal a multi-million-dollar stadium with no one currently in it. So why not use it? Wrestling with no crowds is a bit jarring at first, but this match showcased how cinematic wrestling could add to any match. Some highlights of the match include Jake Hager and Hangman Adam Page's bar encounter, and who can forget Sammy eating a one-winged angel from that high up. My favorite thing to come out of this match, though, was this gif of Sammy Guevara being chased down by a golf cart. Now that is what I call good shit. Number 3, Cody Rhodes breaks the throne. Irony in my soul, oh my gosh, it's Cody Rhodes. AEW's first year has plenty of iconic and infamous moments that have aged like fine wine and kinda like milk. But I can think of no other moment in AEW history that defines the company more than Cody Rhodes' entrance at the 2019 Double or Nothing. As Cody walks out, there is a spotlight on a throne at the top of the entrance ramp. The camera pans to the throne as we hear the famous line, "Wrestling has more than one royal family." This throne, mind you, looked extremely similar to one maybe a cerebral assassin would sit on, or maybe some type of King of Kings if you wish. As Cody takes the sledgehammer from his wife Brandy and smashes the metaphor for the inception of AEW, this went over like Rover with the cult-like fanbase AEW had at the time, including this guy. Now let's finish the story by moving on to the next entrance in our list. Man, wrestling fans are fickle as hell, aren't they? Number 2, Cody versus Dustin Rhodes. Needless to say, I've explained my love for this match before, crowning it my favorite AEW match of all time in a video a few months ago. But there is a special detail I wasn't able to get into in that list that I'd love to highlight about the Battle of Dusty's Sons. All Elite Wrestling's creation was to never go to war with WWE. Anyone who tells you differently, in my opinion, is just being biased towards the company they like the most. Since 2019, both companies have their equal amounts of amazing moments and complete fumbles. But I do agree with the fact that each company tells stories differently. Dustin versus Cody was never going to work with the WWE style of storytelling, period. That's why they got it wrong. This is a story about two brothers raised by the same father that have different philosophies and experiences both in their upbringing in life and in the world of professional wrestling. And you and I both know that the one thing Cody Rhodes loves more than his family and America is his last name, and the legacy that comes with the Rhodes name. It's really easy sometimes to get lost in the argument of which company is better, but this match needed to happen under the right circumstances, and these were it. Letting these two grandsons of a plumber tell their family story in their way in this moment should be remembered for years and be one of the biggest tales of the professional wrestling industry for generations to come. And finally, our number one most shocking AEW Double or Nothing moment is the debut of Jon Moxley. Yeah, well, are you really surprised this is my number one pick given my last video? When you're building out the second biggest wrestling company in the world, you need people who can be stalwarts, people who can pick up the ball and run with it at a moment's notice. Jon Moxley does not only pick up the ball, he throws it to himself and scores every single time for AEW. While I wouldn't call Jon Moxley a company man per se, being that we've seen him perform and show his love for pretty much every promotion under the sun, this love brought him to AEW and made him become the ace of all elite wrestling. Truly a debut that shook the wrestling world, Moxley made his intentions known by attacking the two biggest men in this company's infancy. A textbook example of showing but not telling, a paradigm shift after a quick shrug to Chris Jericho and throwing Kenny Omega off the giant stack of poker chips told us everything we needed to know about the newly formed company and its new signee. He was here to fight, kick people's heads in, and forge a new legacy in combat. Happy Double or Nothing, everyone. And that is our list for the top 10 most shocking AEW Double or Nothing moments. What is your favorite moment that has ever happened at AEW's Double or Nothing? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching Extreme League Wrestling, and we'll catch you next time.